Hi, everybody. Mrs. Whitworth here. We are going to talk about our student success class. This should be, I think, the fourth class of student success. And today we're going to talk about some ideas for submissions. We want you to leave the class today knowing what topic, what subject what class you're going to start with, what topic you're gonna start with, and what resource you're going to use for learning. And then we also want you to have an idea for a submission, something you could create at the end of your learning to show us what you know. And so that's kind of going to be our focus today. We're kind of assuming that you've already gone through the submissions, the frameworks, and the resources. And today we're going to focus on submissions. So I want to start just by sharing with you some samples of submissions that we have received from students. And I've tried to pick from like lots of different content areas so you can kind of see how things might play out in different content. And one of the things that we want you to think about is that different projects or different ways, different ideas will work better for some subjects than for others. For example, I probably wouldn't write a paper to show you that I know how the quadratic formula works. That's probably not what I would do. I would probably show you with maybe a movie. Maybe I would create a video that would kind of walk you through the steps and explain what I know and how that goes. So that's one of the things that we want you to kind of think about today as we go through this. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll go through a whole bunch. Excuse me, I kind of have a frog in my throat today. We'll go through a whole bunch of examples and kind of talk about what those are, what those look like, and how you might use those. So this was a submission by a student for American government. And the idea behind this submission was to show that they understood the difference between federal, state, local, and then tribal governments, and what their responsibilities were, what the overlap was, those kinds of things. And so this is just one slide of an infographic that this student created. And we can kind of zoom in and we can see, okay, this student understands that the federal government controls things and regulates all states nationwide. It controls foreign affairs. They list some examples here. So you can kind of see how this student went through and kind of showed their understanding. Now they would turn this in and then Mr. Clayson would give them feedback and say, hey, this is a great start. What can you tell me about this? Or how can you apply this in your life? Or what does this mean? Or he'll ask some questions and then they would go back and they would revise. Another submission that we had was, this is for a government one again. Sorry, apparently I chose a bunch of those. And I think actually this student submitted this for American government and English. And this was talking about the origins of the American government, how it started, what did it start with, where it came from. So they talk about the monarchy. This student used, you can see here, they have this common sense reference. This shows, if you click on this within this document, you can see all of the articles that this student read to kind of learn about this idea. The next one I want to share, we had a student create a movie. And they, let me see, make sure so they went through their science astronomy class. They went through and they put it to music. They narrated it. I'm going to shut that music off because it's a little bit, shut the narration off. But they narrated the video. They put it to music and slides and just kind of talked about, this is what I learned in astronomy. We had another student who created a newspaper. You can see as I'm going through these, the overlap between like American government, US history, and English is really heavy. And so it's really easy to complete kind of those two classes at the same time. So that's something you want to kind of keep in mind. Science and math are a little bit harder fit with some of those other courses, but there is a lot of overlap with each other. So sometimes you can turn in same things for science as you do for math. So that works sometimes as well. This next one, this student created a timeline. Now I know this student, when they first went through this, they just had the dates and kind of the explanation. And one of the feedback they got was, aside from like spelling, right? Spelling errors from Mrs. Jo. They also had them go back and add some pictures. Like, okay, this is a good start. Pictures would make it, one, more interesting, and two, it would allow us to kind of understand a little bit better what you're talking about. And so the student went back and added some pictures. This is just for English. The students read the play Macbeth, and then they created a book cover for this. And this was all they submitted, was just this picture. And so the revision, the feedback that the student got was, hey, this is really awesome. Can you tell me why you made the choices that you made? And so then the student came back and said, yeah, I chose this color because of this. I did this because of that. There's the symbolism, and so they came back and talked about all of the reasons they made those choices, and resubmitted. The last one I want to show you is actually a geometry project. I had a student, see if we can kind of zoom in a little bit. So it's really hard to tell what they did from this. This student created a roller coaster. Sorry, my mind went blank. The student created a roller coaster. So there's a program. They went online and they designed their own roller coaster. And that took them like maybe 15, 20 minutes. That was super fun. And then you preview it, and they recorded it and sent me the video. And then they went through and told me all of the geometry kind of behind that. And so you can see they said, okay, the track is this far off the ground and it's this wide, and it's this curve part, the inside track, here's my pitch. And then they went through and built supports or braces. If you've ever been to Lagoon down in Utah, and you know the white roller coaster, it's not the white roller coaster anymore because it's brown. They've completely redone it. But on that roller coaster, if you look at it, you can see the geometric structures. You can see all of the braces. There are equilateral triangles and right triangles. And so that's essentially what this student did. She went through and she calculated what all of the braces she would need to have, and where they would need to be, and what they would look like, and how far apart they would be, and how tall they would be at specific places. And this actually, for this student, this covered 4 topics in geometry. And so it's a lot of work, like you're going through here, and there's like maybe 8 to 10 pictures. So it's a lot of work, but with one project, she completed an entire credit of geometry. So this was a really, oh, and you haven't seen any of that. Okay, let me go back through. So you can see she drew the roller coaster like sections. There's a computer program that we found that you can go on and design a roller coaster, and that takes maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And then after doing that, she went through and designed all of the, or created all of the braces. If you've been down to Lagoon in Utah, you know the white roller coaster. That's not white anymore, but it's all made of wood. And so there are all these right triangles, and you can see the braces and the equilateral triangles, and just making everything structurally sound, right? And so that's essentially what she did. She went through and she measured, did all the measurements, and then she calculated all of the angles and calculated all of the lengths, and said, okay, if I'm building it, there should be a brace every so often, and here's the height, and here's how long it would be, and here's et cetera, et cetera. And so it was a lot of work, but this topic, or this project that she did, it completed 4 topics in geometry. So she earned 1 credit with 1 project. She completed the entire part of geometry. So we really love what we call 2-fers or 3-fers, right? So you can turn one thing in for several different things. And the purpose behind that is not to just get through it faster, but we think that the purpose is that if I'm just doing one thing, then I can dig really deep and I can learn it really well. Instead of turning in lots of little things that might show things at like a surface level, I could do one bigger thing and show that I not only have deep content knowledge, but I can also transfer this knowledge to other areas. So that's the idea. I want to show you a way to kind of generate some ideas, because I think sometimes the hardest thing to do is to come up with an idea. And so we end up getting a lot of slideshows, a lot of papers. I'm sure Mrs. Munoz and Mrs. Jo love reading papers, but I'm also sure that they maybe would like some other things as well. So I'm going to show you, I'm using what's called Chat GPT, and this is an AI. It's in beta version right now. But I just want to show you kind of what this might look like for you. So I'm going to say I am a hands-on learner. Let's see, what project could I create that shows I know, let's see, we should grab something. I'm going to just use our last, oh, actually, let me jump over to one of our history ones because I remember they had it in here. If I can find it, it's right here. So I'm going to show, it shows you that I understand this. I know you can't see what I'm doing, just a second. Okay, so I copied and pasted this chunk, this right here. You can see that highlighted. I copied and pasted that from my framework. Okay, so I want to know what project I could create that shows that I know this at a deep level. We're going to just see what it comes up with. It might say, wow, you're crazy. So now it's giving me a whole bunch of stuff really fast, which is awesome, but I'm going to have to go back up to the top and start reading. So this is what it says. As a hands-on learner, you can undertake a project that incorporates both historical research and practical implementation. Here's a project idea that allows you to explore the influence of new technology, because that's what I put in. And then it even tells me, it even gives me a title for my project. So then it says, okay, one of the first things you want to do is you want to do some research, and these are the things you want to explore, you want to research. And then it says, choose a specific technological innovation and implement a hands-on project related to it. Maybe that might mean I'm gonna create a prototype. Okay, so then it talks about a physical model, digital simulation, showcase the economic impact. So this goes through a whole bunch of stuff, and then it says, and then you can present your learning. Okay, so now maybe that's a lot, and I'm like, holy cow, I don't even know. So then I'm going to say this, because I do this a lot using ChatGPT. I'm going to say, could you rewrite that for a fifth grader? And I know that sounds really funny, but what I found is fifth grade is about, they like, oh yeah, here we go. Let's simplify this. Oh, okay. Now I can see this is what I want to do. So find out about cool inventions, discover it, understand, explore, implement it. Again, pick one invention and then create something to show it. So you could make a model, you could draw how it works. The telephone, you could build a small model of that. You could, now these examples are probably at a fifth grade level and maybe not what we want. But the idea is that if you don't know what to do, ChatGPT is a really good way to come up with ideas that will help you learn or generate ideas for what projects might work for you. So I would say maybe using that as a reference, as a resource to kind of come up with some ideas would be a really great thing to do. Now, before we end our meeting today, this video will have some questions embedded in it. The last questions that you're going to need to answer are what we started with. Okay, what subject are you going to focus on first? What topic? And then what resource are you going to use? What learning tool? Do you have a textbook you're going to use? Do you have some videos that you found that you're going to watch? Have you had a conversation with your content teacher so that you know exactly what they're going to have you do with content, with resources? Maybe you maybe you have a resource that is like an actual person. Maybe your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or aunt or uncle is like an economics professor at Idaho State University. And so you're going to go and you're going to sit down with them. Any way you learn the content is totally fine, but you're going to answer that question. What content, or how are you going to learn the content? What resource are you going to use? And then we want you to also come up with an idea for a submission. Once you've done that learning, how are you going to show us? What are you going to create to show us that you know what you've learned? Hopefully that makes sense. And then if you have some questions, we can talk about that in class.